Welcome to Revelation Unraveled. I'm your host, William Tapley, also known as the third eagle of the apocalypse and the co-prophet of these end times. Today is Saturday, October the 3rd, and this past week saw a very important fulfillment of end times Bible prophecy. And that's when the two last kings of the North and South got together for a meeting at the United Nations in New York City. And of course that would be Vladimir Putin of Russia and Barack Obama of the United States. And this was a fulfillment of Daniel 11, verse number 27. We also saw the last of the 4 blood moons. Now in the past, when there have been 4 blood moons, usually they were associated with some disaster which involved the Jews and the nation of Israel. And I believe this was also a warning to the chosen people in the promised land, that disaster is about to strike them. And I believe Israel was also discussed by the last 2 kings in Daniel 11, Putin and Obama. And what's also amazing is that Almighty God gave a commentary on this meeting. And we saw that in this picture of the day, I believe it was on Wednesday, when we saw a leopard get its head caught in a tin pot in India. And the villagers stood around making fun of the poor leopard. And this was a message from Almighty God that both Barack Obama and the United States, who are represented by the leopard in Daniel 7, verse number 6, are being made fools of in the Middle East. When Obama draws a line in the sand, that is a signal for everyone to cross it. And this poor leopard, if it drew a line in the sand, all the villagers standing around could have crossed it without trepidation, because they do not fear a leopard whose head is covered with a tin pot. And by the way, that is a prophecy from Almighty God about the reason Obama is blinded in his Middle East policy. And that is because he is a pothead. Right? Am I correct? And the United States also is compromised by drug usage. And that is what Almighty God is telling us. Neither Barack Obama nor the United States can prevail in the Middle East because we have been compromised by drug usage. Obama and the United States are both potheads. Now it's interesting that this meeting of the 2 last kings, Obama and Putin, really received very little coverage in the media. If you Google it, this was the only story I could come up with. And this was on CNN, and it describes the meeting in very strange terms. And if the media does not cover a story, that means it's very important. In fact, if you want to know what's going on in the world today, don't go by anything you read in the mainstream media. You would be much wiser to read the prophecies of Daniel. In any case, here's what this story says, and the date line is Tuesday, September 29th. Expecting to face calculated detachment and an unshakable attitude, these people have no clue of what these 2 kings were talking about. U.S. President Barack Obama emerged from his highly anticipated meeting with Vladimir Putin Monday with new insight into the Russian president's thinking on Syria. This is a joke. The 2 presidents huddled in a second-floor conference room at United Nations headquarters for roughly 90 minutes, squaring off on the contentious issues of Ukraine and Syria, and also Israel, I might add. They left that out of here. After a 2-year freeze in face-to-face meetings, they discerned each other's strategies. Well, now I am going to tell you what really happened. And in order to see that, we need to read Daniel 11, verse number 27. And the heart of the 2 kings shall be to do evil. You can't trust either Obama or Putin. And they shall speak lies at one table, and they shall not prosper, because as yet the end, this is an end times prophecy from Daniel, is unto another time. And what Daniel is saying is here, neither Obama or Putin win in the end. And of course they will be defeated by Jesus Christ when he returns on Mount Zion in Israel. And he defeats all the tribes of the earth. And we discover what will happen to Israel earlier on in chapter 11, verse number 13. For the king of the north, this is Putin, shall return and shall prepare a multitude much greater than before. Notice that Putin is bringing China into the Middle East. And in the end of times and years, that shows that this is an end times prophecy from Daniel. He shall come in haste with a great army and much riches. Jerusalem will be invaded by many nations, led by Putin, who is also the prince of Persia. He will lead the Muslim nations against Israel. Verse 14, and in those days there shall be many stand up against the king of the south. The United States will have no friends on this planet in this last conflict between the whore Babylon and the scarlet beast. So the king of the north shall come and cast up a mount and take the most fenced cities. We will have no defenses. And the arms of the south shall not withstand. We have the greatest armies in the world, but we cannot withstand Bible prophecy. Neither shall his chosen people. Now this translation is from the King James, which is actually a little more accurate here than the Douay Rheims, because chosen people is a clear reference to Israel. Neither shall there be any strength to withstand. And verse 16, and he shall come upon him and do according to his pleasure, and there shall be none to stand against his face. And he shall stand in the glorious land. The glorious land is Israel, and he, in this case, is, as I say, Vladimir Putin. And it shall be consumed by his hand. Vladimir Putin is not only the last king of the north, but he is the prince of Persia. And as we read elsewhere in Daniel, it is the archangel Michael and Gabriel who will contend with this last king of the north for 3 years. And Obama has no role in the Middle East, nor the United States. We will be a third world nation at the end of this Daniel 9 conflict. By the way, please don't listen to the false prophets here on YouTube. They have no idea what's going on in the Middle East. They have an inkling, but they believe that the Ezekiel 38 war is about to occur. That's false. The Daniel 9 war is about to occur. And none of them will give you the solution to the problem, and that is that 666, that is the forces of the Antichrist, will be defeated by 555, which represents Mary's rosary. Yes, Jesus defeats the Antichrist, but his weapon is Mary's rosary, just as David chose 5 smooth pebbles against Goliath. And if you would like to understand all the great prophecies of Daniel, please visit my thirdeaglemedia.com website.